All right, so we have been talking about Song Dynasty, which is about the 10th century, and then before this this meeting, Pin and I just discussed this period of time. Actually, it's probably equivalent or sometimes more important, more dynamic than the so-called Warring State at 2,500 years ago. Okay, so sometimes because today people don't talk that much or being viewed in a certain way, and we don't see the dynamic of that. So if we go through that, you probably will see the variety probably as different schools in the 500 BC. Okay, so that's why I think that's important to take a close look during this period of time. So today we will talk about, last week we talked about the two metaphysics, or we talk cosmologists, okay, Shao Yong and Zhou Dunyi, and then one focus on the number, okay, and the other one focus on the 5 elements. They try to build the universe, the cosmology. And the next week I'm going to make a little bit focus on the qi, which is Zhang Zai. Okay, he basically, I think everybody talk about qi, and the qi can go everywhere, from the kung fu to the health and to the philosophy, and then actually to the ghost. That's also related to the qi. So next week we're going to talk about this for next week, and right now I'm going to give to Pin to talk about, because we need to celebrate Halloween, and then about the story. And I don't know what Pin is going to focus on, but I think that's important is the background, how Chinese, that's the 18th century, right? How 18th century Chinese see the underworld, okay? And then you will see the Confucian bureaucratic system has been built not only in the secular world, also in the underworld. And the royal exam, okay, the imperial exam has been practiced for, I think, about 800 years during that time. And then it has been in everybody's mind, any learned person's mind. No matter you are alive or you dead, it's still in your mind. So that's a very different situation. So I think the king is going to have a more. Okay, so let's start the Pin. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Nick. No.
Thank you, Jason. Let me share my screen. Okay, I assume everyone can see my PowerPoint just fine. So as Jason said, today we're gonna delve into a story from a very, still even today, I would say, a very popular book of Chinese classical literature. And it's the first story of 491 stories in this book. So let's just get right into it. So a quick outline. First, I'm going to start with some basic info for everyone, just the who, where, when, and what of this book and the story and the author. And then I'll say a few words about the legacy of this book. And as Jason said, it's a short little story that really actually encapsulates a lot of concepts in traditional Chinese spirituality. So I'm going to give some background explanations so that when we actually read the story, it's much easier to understand it and interpret it. And then we're going to read the original text. And then I'm going to further expand upon some, just point out some of the other concepts that's embedded in this short little story. And then open up for discussion. I pose some questions just to help move the discussion, initiate it, but we don't have to use those questions. I'll say probably my motivation for doing this story is that a couple of times in my life, I've been asked by people not from the Chinese culture the simple question, is there religion in China? And it's a very simple question that I actually always find myself tongue-tied, not knowing how to answer it, because it's a question that demands a yes or no answer. And I feel like either answer would be very misleading. On one hand, I can say yes, and that would be a correct answer. Of course, there is a prominent religion called Taoism, religious Taoism, that's indigenous to China. But you look at what people actually practice and believe in traditionally, even though often we just attribute it to Taoism because there's no other better attribution, but in fact, it's not really Taoism. And then if I say no, that would be a kind of a correct answer, because the religion and religious beliefs in China is very different from what we think of in the West, where, for example, Christianity, Judaism, and not necessarily West, of course, the Islam, it's very much more structured and constant structure. There's one book, one scripture book, there's one God. Whereas in the Chinese belief system, it's very nebulous, very dynamic. It's really more like a parallel universe that also evolves with the one that we're living in. So anyway, I won't get too much into it. But I really think this one little story is a good intro and good little platform for us to peer, a little window to peer into this. So let's start with the author. Who was this guy, Hu Songling? Well, he was born in the late Ming Dynasty in 1640 AD into a middle-class merchant family. And as most middle-class families of that time, you aspire to and discipline yourself to study and take the imperial exams. I hope to excel in it and get assigned to become a government government official and move up the social ranks that way. So that's what he did. And just to set the scene, he was born into the very last days of the Ming Dynasty. It was a very tumultuous times, whereas large-scale rebellions starting in the 1630s and eventually the Manchurian invasion brought down the Ming Dynasty, at which time the Manchus established the last dynasty in Chinese history, the Qing Dynasty. So he was born into very tumultuous, chaotic environment. And when the Qing Dynasty was established, he was a young chap, and he started taking the imperial exams. And initially, he did very well, got placed very high at the lower levels and received some honors. But he was stuck there. Even though his first successful exam was at age 19, he was stuck at the county level until age 72, where he got special honors for the county level, but still he never was able to move up into the provincial level and the national level. And therefore he never got assigned a real government job. So he made his living instead by being a tutor for children of prominent families. And also he did some stints as a advisor, staff advisor for government officials. And because of this work as advisory staff, gave him an opportunity to travel out of his home province in northern China and travel to southern China to Jiangsu province, and this has benefited his story collection. His true passion, aside from taking the exams, is he's always been an avid story collector since age 20. Purportedly, he set up roadside stands selling tea and smokes and offering, and this as a way to stop passersby and ask them if they have any kind of wild, interesting stories to share. And people who gave him a worthwhile story, he would in return give them a bowl of millet and mung bean porridge. And he passed away in Qing Dynasty at the age of 76. So just to show geographical context, he was born in northern China in the Shandong Peninsula. Qingdao is to the east on the peninsula, and that's where the popular Qingdao beer is being made these days. And for his work, he traveled to the Yangtze River Delta to Jiangsu province for, I think, only just for a year or so. So having led a modest lifestyle with modest income, he didn't have the money to publish his book, even though he really wanted to. But many copies were shared among his friends and peers. And he continued to revise his stories until his death. And finally, 51 years after his death, this book was published in 1766. And actually the original manuscript was passed from generation to generation in his family. And even today, half of the original manuscript is now in the Liaoning Library in mainland China. This is the only extant manuscript of any classical Chinese novel. So just to put the time frame into the greater context of Chinese history, this chart on the upper left is the first known Chinese dynasty, the Xia dynasty, about 4,000 years ago. And his lifetime falls towards later periods here at the juncture of the Ming and Qing dynasties. Jason, you have your hand up. You have a question or comment?
Yeah, I do have a question. On the previous slide, you talk about half the original manuscript now is the only manuscript, classic novel. Okay, so are you talking about Liao Zhai? This book is the only classic novel?
No, the only one where the original manuscript, the actual writing,
okay.
The author still survives today.
Okay, so I'm interested. This one is, I find out that the language is very different than other we so-called classic novel, Chinese novel. I don't know you notice that or not. I know that I feel this way, and that I read that one not because enjoy the story. I probably enjoy the writing style. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah. He was a great writer, and like you said, he has a very unique style, and I'll get into that. I'll touch on that just a little bit. And so, what is this book? It's a collection of 491 folk-inspired stories based on his elaborated and fantasized based on the stories that he's collected, actually from real people in his life. And many of these stories involve fox and snake fairies, ghosts, demons, and other supernatural phenomena, and many heroines. The writing style that Jason and I were just touching on, it follows, partly inherits the tradition of Tang Dynasty short stories, which also tells many of these exotic stories from, actually sometimes from people from all over the world that lived in China. And so it has a very style, a very concise language and exotic topics. But it stands out, it really has, it's not just inheriting that style, it's actually, I would say, improved it by a lot, especially in the areas of plot and character development. And that really have the reader build a connection to the characters. I really start to care about the characters. So the abundance of love stories between humans and demons and spirits induces the reader's emotional connection to characters, despite that they are demons, that despite our preconditioned fear and disgust of such beings. It's also often perceived as a social commentary book, that the juxtaposition of lovable demons and cruel, corrupt government officials.
Black! Wait, what? Is that Black being?
It expands or actually inverts the reader's notion of what is lovable, what is noble, and what is evil and despicable. So this actually, in my opinion, follows this style of using fantastic stories to break pre-established human conceptions of good or bad. Follows the tradition of Zhuangzi's Taoist writing tradition. So as far as the legacy of this book, it's really truly has been a very lasting popular book. It's lasting popularity for the past 250 plus years since it was first published. It's also of really historical value as historical document, because the rich portrayal of common people's lives, how people actually lived, and really very honest and frank portrayal without all these moral cover-ups of society, I think is very precious, of people's lives in the 17th and 18th century China. This captures many aspects that complements official history books. I'll just name a couple of examples that I can mention off the top of my head. The story, the martial heroine, reveals the prevalence of casual, straight, and gay sexual relationships at that time. And the story Quick Knife, it was a story of beheadings and really illustrates the widespread unrest and oppression in late Ming Dynasty China. And it's also a gateway book due to its the nature that is storytelling and popularity for many people, probably including myself, to start dabbling into classical Chinese. The great 20th century scholar Hu Si claimed that Liao Zhai, in fact, is the real book where people learn how to read and write classical Chinese. That's just his claim, but about a dozen or so of the most popular stories have been wildly popular. It's been made into countless movies, operas, cartoons, and TV shows. And it's had, in that respect, it's had very clear influence on martial arts novels and movies. For example, the prevalence of female warriors and heroines. So here I'll just play a little trailer of one of the more popular movies that's become pretty popular in the West too. Now, I'm not very good with Zoom, so I hope you can hear and play this, see this fine. If not, please let me know.
No sound.
No sound. Under the share screen, there's a share sound button.
That beautiful girl is a ghost. So
Spoiler.
yeah, the boy and then the travel and stay in a small temple and see a beautiful girl, and that girl is actually a ghost. Okay.
Yeah, ruin the ending for us. Spoiler.
The ending is I think we all, Pin and I probably we watch in the same age. You know, probably more attracted by the beauty of the girl more than.
All right, I hope everyone enjoyed that short little trailer to give you a little visual imagery of these stories. So let's get into some of the concepts that I feel like it would be very helpful to explain before we delve into the story to help us understand and interpret the story. So very important, right in the title of this story is called 考城隍, means exam to become a 城隍, which I translate as the underworld mayor. So who and what is a 城隍? So 城隍, virtually all Chinese provinces, counties, cities, and towns have, or at least once had, a 城隍 temple. And the words 城 and 隍 in Chinese written here, literally 城 means town, and 隍 means the moat that surrounds the town wall. So the 城隍is a job title. It refers to the mayor or a governor governing from the underworld. So the duties of this job include protecting the jurisdiction, whatever county or town or city is under the 城隍's jurisdiction. And a very important duty is also to reward the good, punish the bad, and determine people's lifespans based on that. And the identity, like I said, this is a job title. So that job at different posts are filled by different people. Well, not living people, but dead people. So the identity of the 城隍 is usually ascribed to the spirit of a celebrated person that's already deceased. And depending on local traditions, the 城隍 for a particular town can have limited terms. And so every so many years, there will be a new Chenhuang. And sometimes could even be, according to local tradition, could be, through a democratic process, some kind of election. And some cities like Shanghai have multiple Chenhuangs for the same city. And the prevalence of this tradition dates back to at least the Han Dynasty, about 2,000 years. So yeah, just to explain, in the Chinese tradition, gods and deities can be deceased humans, can be animals. There's a famous, very popular temple in northern Taiwan, in Jinshan. I think Jason probably knows the Ba Wang Gong Miao, where the god there is a dog, and a lot of people go there and worship. Can be an old tree, can be mountain spirits, so on and so forth. And so just to give you an example of a Chenhuang temple, this is in my hometown of Taipei. So the history of this temple, right now it's in one of the busiest areas in Taipei. About 100 migrants from mainland China, from Zhangzhou, Fujian province, when they traveled to Taiwan, they carried the statue of this Chenhuang from their hometown with them to protect them and help them have a safe journey across the Taiwan Strait. So this happened in 1821. They brought the statue. And after so many years, they managed to get land from a Qing Dynasty official, Admiral Su Feiran, who was the Vice Navy commander in Taiwan at that time. So he donated land so that people can build a temple to host this god. And today, if you ever happen to be in Taipei, you can go to the Dihua Street in Taipei and take a look. So here are some pictures. The upper right is the building of the temple itself. It's a small temple. And pictures, this is upper left is one of the guardians, the guards of Chenhuang. Lower left is just a close-up picture of one of the lanterns in the temple. In the lower right, in the center, is the Chenhuang himself, and guarded by his staff on the left and right. So, okay, so what's the underworld and what happens there? Well, we currently live in the yang dimension, according to Chinese tradition. Yang is the same as what you hear when you hear yin and yang. It's the same word in Chinese. And upon death, the world of the dead is the yin. Sorry, this should be, there's no G there. Is a yin, just remove the G here, it's a misspelling. Is a yin dimension. And so the transition when one dies from the yang to the yin can happen in one of two ways. So if the person has been evil, one of the two pairs of death officers will come to get you. There's one pair is called the black non-constant. This is my translation, so it may not be correct. And the white non-constant. So Hei Wu Chang and Bai Wu Chang. Well, another pair is the bovine head and the horse face. So on the right here, you see two statues depicting these two, there's the horse head on the left and the bovine, horse face, I'm sorry, on the left and the bovine head on the right. And to arrest that bad person's soul to the yin dimension. So I hope for all of us here, we'll never need the knowledge of what these two look like. And ordinary, now for most people, the ordinary people, the soul initially wanders in confusion because the person hadn't realized that that had happened. So that person is still thinking that he or she is still alive. And this can happen for up to 6 days. Because you see, the government in the yin dimension is very busy. So it depends on how soon they can send an agent to break the news to you. So the longest delay is 6 days. But by or before the 7th day, a local god, and according to some traditions is what we call the 土地公, shows up and tell the soul what had happened and help the soul to accept death. And sometimes the god has to convince the person, has to show the person what the decayed body looks like, and also show the funeral ceremonies of the family members to help the soul accept that he or she is dead. And then escort the soul to Chen Huang's court. So Chen Huang's court is the first stop in the yin dimension, where the initial trial is conducted. So as I said, an evil person will be sentenced to 地狱. So 地狱literally means earth prison or hell. So 地狱 has 18 levels of increasing suffering. So depending on your crime, you get sentenced to a particular level. And this includes, the most famous levels include climbing a mountain of knives and being stir-fried in the wok. So 上刀山下油锅. And this is sometimes, you know, if someone really pisses you off, this is what you curse people with. But ordinary people reincarnate according to the assignment by the officials in the underworld. And this happens within 49 days. So 7 times 7. And extraordinarily good people get promoted to godhood and gets assigned of the appropriate bureaucratic rank in the afterworld, in heaven, if you will. Now, this is also very important. When the god comes and get people and escort them to the yin world, some people have, due to extreme resolved issues, for example, people who have suffered great injustice in the living world, people who were murdered, you know, there's a lot of pain and unresolved suffering. A few of those souls sometimes will refuse to move on to the yin dimension and linger on forever in the yang dimension. So that's a very, very sad, those are very, very sad cases in the Chinese belief. They become ghosts that can haunt living human beings. So this is the origin of the existence of ghosts. And they are commonly referred to in our language as lonely souls and feral ghosts, 孤魂野鬼. So a most important objective of the Chinese funeral ceremonies is to help convince the soul that it's okay for them to move on and also have a smooth journey to the yin dimension. And by the way, the Chen Huang is just a preliminary trial. All trials are reviewed by higher courts in the other world, and sometimes people can make appeals all the way to the emperor of heaven, or actually there's an emperor of hell too, so it probably goes to the emperor of hell. Another quick thing to point out before we start reading the story is the Chinese character 人. 人 is a Confucianist concept, kind of the highest virtue that one should strive to achieve. And it's roughly translated as benevolence, kindness, or humanity in English. And this character comprises two parts. The left side is a character for person or human. And I have it here, that's what it looks like. And the right side is actually the character for the number 2. So the character for 人 is the person plus 2 becomes a character for 人. So the interpretation here is that benevolence and kindness is about how people interact with one another. So the ancient people created this character to represent this concept. So let's now actually read the story itself. And it's a very short story. So if you bear with me, because I think there's probably a couple of people in the audience who actually speak Chinese. I would like to read it in Chinese. It'll take just a couple of minutes. And also, I think at the end, the people who don't read Chinese will appreciate how concise classical Chinese reading can be. Because this is 1 page in Chinese, and there's a little over 3 pages in English. Okay, so I'll read this. 与姐夫之祖，宋公会韬，一丙申，一日病卧，见立持牒牵白牒马来，允请复试。公言：文宗未临，何惧得考？立不言，但敦促之。公立即乘马从去，路甚生疏。至于城郭，如王者都。一时入府谢，公事壮丽，上作10余官，都不知何人，唯冠状目可视。檐下设机墩各2，先有一秀才坐其末，公便与连间。机上各有笔札，恶题纸飞下，视之8字云：一人2人，有心无心。二公文臣陈殿上，公文中有云：有心为善，虽善不少；无心为恶，虽恶不伐。诸神传赞不已，到公上，欲曰：河南缺一城隍，君称其职。公方悟，顿首泣曰：汝应宠命，何敢多次？但老母期寻，奉养无人，请得终其天年，为听录有。仗以帝王相者，即令姬母受疾，有长须吏捧册翻阅一过，百有阳算9年，共踌躇间，官帝曰：不妨令张生设院，9年瓜代可也。乃魏公应即赴任。今推仁孝之心，给假9年，即起当复相召。又勉励秀才数语。二公稽首并下，秀才握手，送诸交也。自言：常善张某，以失正别，都忘其志。中有花有酒，分常在，无烛无灯，夜自明之句。更记其，乃别而去。及底里，或若梦寤。时足以3日，母闻关中呻吟，伏出半日，使成语。问之常山，国有张生于是日死矣。后9年，母果卒，营葬祭毕。晚狄入室而没。其岳家居城中西门内，忽见公楼鹰朱粉，羽马甚重，登其堂一拜而行。相共今矣，不知其为神。奔讯乡中，则已没矣。公有自记小传，悉乱后无存，此其略耳。So now we are now let's read it in the English translation. Actually, connect it. Maybe we'll do tag team on this. Can I get a volunteer to read the first page here? There's about 3 pages.
I can do it.
Great, thank you.
My elder sister's husband's grandfather, the late Mr. Song Tao, was a salaried licentiate in our city. One day, while lying ill, he saw an official servant with a document leading a horse with a white forehead who approached him with a message. "You are summoned to an examination," he said. Song answered, "The provincial examiner has not yet arrived. Why should I hurry to be examined?" The messenger did not reply, but pressed him to go. Song overcame his sickness, got on the horse, and followed after. The road was quite strange. They reached a city resembling the capital of a prince. They shortly entered a palace with very beautiful and imposing buildings. 10 or more officials were seated at the upper end of one hall, all strangers to him, except Guan Zhuangwu, Guandi, god of war, whom he recognized. Below, under the eaves, were put 2 tables and 2 stools. There was a candidate already seated at the end. Song then sat down, shoulder to shoulder with him. Brushes and paper were laid out on the tables. Suddenly, a piece of paper with a theme on it fluttered down from above. Looking at it, they saw the 8 following words: 1 person, 2 persons, with intention, without intention. When they both finished their essays, they passed them up.
Oh, you're such a great story reader. Would you mind continuing?
Sure. Can you switch the page for the screen? Yeah, there you go.
Uh-huh.
Okay. In Song's essay, there was the following passage: "For a good deed that is intended, there is to be no reward. For wrong that is unintended, there is to be no punishment." It was unanimously praised as it was circulated among the deities, and Song was summoned into their presence and thus ordered, "Henan province lacks a city god. You are designated to this post." Song then realized what had happened. He kowtowed and wept, saying, "I am highly and unworthily honored with your commands. How could I dare refuse? And yet my old mother is 70-some years old, and there's no one to care for her. I beg of you to permit me to wait until the end of her destined life, and then I will be at your disposal." There was one among them resembling an emperor, who commanded that they search out his mother's term of life. A servant with a long beard brought in a large record book and, turning leaves over, examined it and reported that 9 years still remained for her to live. They were all in a quandary, but Guandi said, "Never mind, let candidate Zhang act in his place, and after 9 years he shall be relieved." And then he said to Song, "You ought to proceed at once to your post, but in consideration of your filial affection, a leave of 9 years is granted to you, after the end of which term you will again be summoned." He also addressed words of encouragement to the other candidate. They both made their obeisance and stepped down. The other candidate took Song's hand and led him out into the countryside. He told him that his name was Zhang and he was from Changshan. As a parting gift, he presented him with a bit of verse. I have forgotten all that was in it, but it included these lines: "If we have flowers and have wine, we enjoy eternal spring. Lacking candles, lacking lamps, the night itself to us is bright." Song then got upon his horse and, bidding them farewell, left. Having arrived at his village, he became conscious, as if waking from a dream. He had been dead for 3 days. His mother heard groans in the coffin and helped him out. It was some time before he was able to speak. He asked about Changshan and found that there really was a candidate named Zhang who had died the same day he had. 9 years later, his mother died. When the funeral was over, Song performed his washings, went to his room, and died. His wife's parents lived inside the city near the western gate. They suddenly saw Song followed by many carriages and horses with festive trappings and red tasseled bridles arrive at the palace at their place, enter the hall, make his obeisance, and go. They were all astonished and alarmed, not knowing that he had become a spirit. They hastened to his village to inquire and found that he had just died. Is that it? I still have that screen.
Oh, okay. It hasn't updated. Okay. Well, I'll read this last sentence. Thank you, Karen. That was really, really awesome.
Oh, there it is. I can finish. You go. Song
okay.
had made his own records of his experiences, but unfortunately, in the confusion and disturbances at the end of the Ming Dynasty, period 20, they were lost. This is only a bare sketch of the story.
Great, great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you read it. I would have a lot of problem with that word obeisance. And so there's some concepts that's embedded in this short little story. One is the very popular Chinese belief of Ji Yin De. Ji means accumulate in Chinese. Yin De, okay, let me explain a little bit. Yin, again, this is the same character as in yin and yang. De, and this word yin has a lot of different meanings. As you know from your studies in Taoist philosophy, yin is the negative energy, and it could represent female or dark, but in this case, its meaning is obscurity. And De is also the same De as in Dao De Jing, or some people say Tao Te Ching. So normally in common language, its rough meaning is virtue, or an accumulation of good deeds. So the rough translation here is accumulation of obscured virtue. And here's the belief is that when you do a good deed in life, if it's the kind that no one else knows, that is unnoticed or unrecognized, this is a kind of virtue that's gonna earn you credits when you go to the yin dimension. Things are good things that you have done here, and other people know about it, and you've been recognized. You know, you won praises, you got awards, whatever. That you already been rewarded for that. So that doesn't get you any points after you die, or well, not even after you die. It doesn't give you any points in Chen Huang's record book. Okay, so another, of course, concept touched on here is the imperial exams to become government officials. And then there's another concept we say in Chinese is Tian Shu. Tian means sky or heaven or divine, and Shu is number. So this is a concept that there's this divine being, these supernatural beings like Chen Huang and other officials there that actually keeping books on everyone. And they determine your ultimate fate. So this is something that's determined somewhere else. Although by doing good things or doing bad things, you can change that computation there. So and then another rather Chinese concept that doesn't have quite the same equivalent in English is the best translation is filial piety here. So yeah, so anyway, we gone through the main part of that. So let's open up for discussion just to help facilitate. We don't have to use these questions. I try to come up with some just as a seed. So how do you interpret Song Tao's answer to the exam question? For a good deed that is not intended, there is to be no reward. For a wrong that is unintended, there shall be no punishment. And what's your interpretation? Do you agree with the value system that it conveys? How do you interpret the poem that the other guy gave him? If we have flowers and we have wine, we enjoy eternal spring. Lacking candles, lacking lamps, the night itself to us is bright. And from the story, what can change fate? And what changed the God's decision? And why is this the first story of Pusolin's book? And anyway, these are certainly, there's no right or wrong answers. Everyone can have a different answer, and it's all good. So anyway, I'll stop talking. Thank you all so much. Madeline, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Penn. Thank you, Jason. Let's see. Well, I had a couple of comments and then a question. I think that this story began and ended with establishing verisimilitude. In other words, it happened to my sister's husband's grandmother's neighbor.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, there were witnesses. They saw the spirit going into the temple. So there are witnesses on either end, which kind of establish that the thing is true within a ghost story framework. I was wondering about the exam. Is this the 8-legged exam system essay?
Yeah.
I think it was called. And then I was wondering if it was a logic problem in some way, like one man with intention, one man something without intention, two men with intention, two men without intentions. And then if we're supposed to try to fit his answer into that, or am I just overthinking that?
Oh, you're right. So this is actually a good, someone else, I just know this, sorry, I haven't been looking at the chat box till now, asked what was the exam question. So yeah, we should discuss that in a little depth. And this is actually pretty good portrayal of the vagueness of these typical exam questions in the ancient time. And it's almost like a little puzzle. So the exam question, let's see, it's on the bottom here. It's at the very bottom of the slide. One person, two persons, with intention, without intention. So for a long time until I was pretty confused by this. And here's my interpretation, is this is why I actually did a little spiel on the character Ren. So one person is just a person. Two persons point to the character Ren, which is person and two. So the way that the main character of the story, he solved this puzzle is that this is what they're trying to get at, is one person is humans, two persons is Ren, benevolence, and then the next is with intention, without intention. And your essay is supposed to somehow first solve this puzzle and then come up with some ideas about social governance. So this is where he saw this, he said, okay, so this two persons points to the concept of Ren, of benevolence and humanity, or doing good deeds. And then he came up with a theme that if you do a good deed with intention, and as usual, it's hard to translate Chinese because there can be many different meanings. So with intention, really what it means in my interpretation is that with intention means you're doing some good deed with the idea that you'll get rewarded. You're going to earn praises. You're going to get recognized in this world, in this living world, current world. And without intention is when you just do good deeds because you're just a good person. You just like helping people, and you never even thought about, maybe some good will come out. So so his thesis was, if you do it with intention, you shall not be rewarded. If you do it with also the same with when you do it wrong without intention, you shall not be punished because it's a genuine mistake. And this is why I also say, this embedded in this story is this traditional concept. I shouldn't even say tradition, it's still very much alive today. Is 积阴德, accumulate obscure virtue, obscure good deeds. Do good stuff, but don't let anyone know about it, because that's how you earn credit. So that's my take on it. I see Jason and Joseph.
I'd like to answer your question, right? Why this one put in the first, right? I think it's very obvious. That's a very cutting throat, this kind of system. So if you don't pass to the third level, you see he to the how many years old? 70 years old, still in the same stuck.
72. He's still stuck at the same first level.
So some people can to the highest level, like 19 years old, but some people just like you got the first grade, the best student in the primary school, but you never able to enter the middle school. So, and you always know you are the best student when you were in primary school, but for some reason, you just not pass the enter exam for the middle school or high school, and they forget about college. So this kind of frustration. And then I found his writing. I really appreciate his language, the word he uses. It's very concise and much better than the word the classic novel I keep talking about, like Journey to the West or the Romance of Regan. His language is very concise, very good one. So I can feel. So the word is he is overeducated person but underemployed, right? Yeah. So it's the situation. So he will expect in the afterlife he will have something. I think he's just projecting, will have this kind of, in the way he is protesting, hopelessly protest, this kind of system, I think. And smart thing is I find out it's pretty common from the West and from the East for this kind of story writing, right? They try to write the strange story and they try to tell you at the beginning, right? My brother's wife's grandfather, this kind of far distance to show it's true. And to the end, right? He tell you when the person died and then his father-in-law saw him walk through by some place. So in a way tell you that's the true story. But in a way also tell you for the long distance and the lost the paper, tell you, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I cannot find the solid evidence to prove it, but it is true. So I think that's pretty common. I think I see this kind of style in Western and in Chinese strange story writing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I also, my take on this is that this is some kind of self-portrayal. Whether he's the main character or the other character, or both, probably both. He's projecting himself onto both characters there. Joseph and Kanishka after. So,
I'll just I just like the idea for a good deed that is intended, there will be no reward. I just think of that as something like a duty, that you're supposed to do. And so therefore you're just following, the natural way of doing your, whatever it is, an action that you're taking. But for the person that is unintended doing a good thing, they're good at the core. They're just doing it because, that's who they are. And there's something deeper there. And I think that there's something that is intrinsic to the person themselves. So that's one way of looking at that. and for unintended, that there's no punishment. I can, I think that's reasonable, because obviously that, if you don't intend to hurt someone, I mean, then you could do quite a horrible thing, but at the same time, you weren't necessarily aware, and that's actually still represented in our law today. It requires a certain level of intent. So that's the way I just read those three kinds of approaches to, as far as intention and reward and punishment or non-punishment.
Yeah, great points. Great points. Thank you. Kanishka, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So about why is this the first story of Pusong Lism's book? I think, and even about the question, I don't think it was an exam question either. It was just a statement, and it was an assertion that how do you assert your decisions itself as good and bad? Because if you would see the exam paper, it wasn't a question mark at the end. It was just a sentence, right? One person, two person, with intention, without intention, and how the person taking that exam interprets that depends on how much of values that particular person has had to follow in their lifetime itself. And when it comes to asserting good versus bad, and whether whatever you're doing is good or bad, this is the kind of assertion that you can use. That are you interpreting the question correctly first, and then going in towards your deed or the task that you want to do. So watching yourself first and then the others, or watching your actions first and how it would benefit the other is the reason why the story is first in that person's book, is what I think.
Oh, great points. Great point. Thank you. DLJ and then Ginny.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about the two persons bit. I'm just wondering whether that means with or without witnesses. So it strikes me as the, I think it's Gospel of Matthew, about praying in public. Yeah, that kind of thing. So what if, yeah, so it's not just a case of doing it with intent or not, but doing it for show. So if there's another witness doing good, I mean, yeah, anyway, that. So I thought that was the one person, two person thing.
Yeah, very interesting perspective. Also the connection, the comparison to the book of Matthew. Yeah, thank you. And Ginny.
I just want to respond to the first line. For a good deed that is intended, there is to be no reward. I agree with that, because a person who does a good deed, just to do a good deed, they don't expect any reward. But a person who does good deeds so that they can receive reward, they don't deserve to get a reward. So I like what he says on the first line. And for wrong that is unintended, that is to be no punishment. Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. I because it's interesting. It could be controversial, right? In a way, it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but so I'm very interested in what everyone, whether you agree or not. And Kevin, and then I see Madeline and DLJ.
Thank you, Ping. My interpretation based on your question, and here's the question you ask is about one person, two person, have heart without heart. So that's his answer about has heart with your translation with good deed. if you intentionally do something good, it's no award. Yeah, and without the intention did something wrong, no punishment. It's kind of makes sense. Actually, in modern days, law, we consider that, right? You got a mental issue, maybe you consider that's something. Yeah, that's something new in modern day, right? We not consider you going to take serious, go to prison or reduce your punishment. A second question, do you agree with value system? I not just myself agree. I would say that's in practice in Chinese society. I would say we ought to see when especially your last slide, I would say you can go back that. About basically build accumulate build up your in modern days, we talking here when we live is young, it's Confucius practice. Another side, that's a beautiful, I would say you print from this novel is not just we live the young side world, we also got a yin side world, yin and yang. You see about cosmology, that's something we didn't notice. I didn't notice. And examination is here also in the imperial exam in the living world. Also, Chenghua, right, a city, a town, and that also need examination too from in world. Very interesting. And here's number. That's a tier heaven, a sky number. Tier is heaven, right? We can. I'll prefer use this original sky number. We also qi su. This number. That's how we Chinese uses su number. For example, we describe White dynasty. Okay, 300 years. You see, the dynasty got trouble in finance, internal rebellion, external invade. Some prediction they go to qi su qi. If energy number or qi number, we know if yes Chinese we know the qi. That's also number. It's very interesting to see. The last one, filial piety. Answer your another question. What can change the God? Yeah, back to the society. You can back to another slide. Yeah, what changed the God's decision? That's a filial piety.
Yeah, yeah.
That's yeah from this Sun, right? Sun told, I love this job. However, I got my old mother so at home until then that's why check a book. They also check his mother how longer live again 90 years. So at the same day after 90 years, after his mom passed, he also passed away. Very interesting. And back to this last, how do you interpret the poem? Very interesting. For my personally, I would say that's ordinary life. Yes, you have flower with wine, spring, which means spring is beautiful thing in especially north of China. It basically not too cold, not too warm. It's just perfect. And you have green and lots of food growing up. Everything is like boomed. And so that's the moment you enjoy. Another sentence is no candle, no lamp, but the night itself is bright. I would consider a couple interpreting. First one is about when you passed away, you didn't see the light from our vision. So however, no worry, you still the light itself light. I believe that guy enjoy his job. He going to replace Song Tao do the officer, Chenghua officer. Yeah, I'm going to pause here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also have some similar thoughts about the filial piety. There was, in the story, he brought this up, and this was enough to change the God's minds. When he said, I need to look after my mother, who was very old. then the gods certainly pause. That overrules everything. The gods pause and say, let's come up with a workaround to make this happen. And the poem, to explain Kevin's answer a little bit, I in the beginning he said he translated the exam question as the second part as have heart and no heart. That's a literal translation. It's actually what it says in Chinese. Heart in Chinese could mean intent. So that's where it is. And anyway, I have also maybe later some interpretations of this poem to share, but I'd like other people to speak. So Madeline and then Karen.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Well, I was thinking about the poem, making guesses at the interpretations. I see a structure of have and lack. Eternal spring, at first glance, I think of daytime and dawn, life, and that the simple things that make us happy, like, I don't know if these are cut flowers or outdoor flowers and wine, then for that moment that we are enjoying these things, we have eternal spring. Night, with its yin connotations, is making me think of the afterlife in this story. So perhaps if we don't bring our preconceived ideas with us, our own lights that we make in our minds, we can see that afterlife for what it is, excuse me, and maybe move on more quickly. So those are just my guesses at the meaning of the poem.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sounds good. And Karen.
Yeah, I backwards to the, well, I guess I go. I was thinking about the good deed that's intended, just to play devil's advocate. You could say that that Kant would be one to challenge this idea, right? So, I could see that if someone's intending to do something as a description, it's a good deed, then you might say, well, that's not really admirable because they're trying to either impress the people around them or chalk one up with the book of the book of judgment kind of thing that you've been describing. And that seems too utilitarian. But, sort of Kant famously says, do good things just because it's their nature, or they just feel like doing it. They're unreliable, right? Because they might have a bad day or their personality might change. And so the only truly valuable good deeds are those that are intentionally done with this vision of, I want to be committed to doing the right thing, so the good intent. So that's an interesting contrast. Now, I personally might side more with this version of morality than Kant's, but I just wanted to play devil's advocate there and say that, that there's the opposite views been put forward. And then also that for a wrong that is unintended, there is to be no. Definitely agree that in our law system, we definitely think unintended crimes are less bad than intended ones. But I just heard an interesting podcast, I think yesterday, from Malcolm Gladwell, part of his revisionist history about the death by drunk driving of the author of Gone with the Wind. And he said at the time, everybody sort of felt sorry for the driver as well, because they saw drunk driving as equally an accident for them, like that poor drunk driver, they didn't intend to hurt anyone. And now, now they're really sad because they killed someone, and certainly attitudes have changed to that, right? Yeah, you didn't mean to hurt anybody, but you kind of, put yourself into a position where you caused a harm. So I think there is some idea, like, for example, with global warming, like we didn't intend to trash the planet, but we know what we're doing. And so we're kind of also responsible for the situation that is a result of our actions, whether or not intended. So yeah, so there's also just to play devil's advocate, because I think that it is a very sympathetic, interesting view. But
yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's why I threw out the question, because certainly depending on the perspective, right? That could be just wrong what this
right.
answer is, right? You know, from the legalist school perspective, reward and punishment is about shaping people's behavior. You should not care about intent at all. Or you might say, like you said, well, someone just doing good things like accidentally, is that really worth rewarding? So there's different ways to. I think he's clever in the first story to throw out something that's, I think even at his time was probably controversial,
Pin, you muted yourself.
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna give a little priority to people who haven't spoken yet. So I see Olga and then Brian Nelson, and then we'll go to Madeline and well, that's what I see. So Olga, please. You're muted. Okay, Olga might be having connection problems, so we'll go to Brian Nelson.
Oh, okay. This is Penny, actually.
Hi, Penny.
Hi. I was just looking at the second, the poem there about the flowers and the wine. And, looking at it, it seems to me that like flowers are, like beauty, like nature. So if you have beauty and nature in your life and then wine, that would mean that you have all the things I think that you need to live well, because if you got wine, you probably got food and everything like that, because wine is a higher level. So to me, it's like, it's a really good life if you have beauty and you have the things you need. And so that's like, spring, which would be the best time of year, eternally. On the other side, I was thinking, just kind of looking at what really happens, like if you're in your house and it starts to go dark, it looks really dark outside if you've got light in your house, and then you walk outside and you're like, oh, it's not really dark out yet, but in my house it looked really dark. So I feel kind of like they're saying, like, if you're in nature itself and you're out there, then you can see, you can move around, you can, you're at ease in that. But if you take the artificial light or candles, then you're trying to shut out the dark and create this own little space for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, those are very, very interesting interpretations. Appreciate it. Olga.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got disconnected for some reason. So,
no problem.
About intention and no intention, you said that Chinese characters, they could have many interpretations, and probably here that's interpretation to do something with intention to be noticed. Maybe there is some kind of what kind of intention to be noticed. And there is someone saying that in Bible, in like New Testament, also that was said that if you praying in the public, in again with intention to be noticed, that what kind of reward do you need more? So go and pray in your room, and it's you, and it will be given to you. So it's also, there is in Bible, I remember something was like do good to your enemies, because anyone do good to your friends, to friends, to people that do good to you. So do good to enemies who do something bad to you. Then it's like you will be rewarded more. So there are probably, I don't know scripture that good, but probably there are more parallels with other religious systems. And I think that there is maybe some I don't know, something in this, what kind of intention it should be. If it's intention to be noticed, it's one thing. Without this intention, you will be rewarded later. That's it, what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent points. Yeah, exactly. Intention of what? And personally, I agree with you. I think he's pointing to intentions of how genuine are the good deeds. Are you doing this to, like you said, for other people to see or not? Madeline and then Jason.
Okay, yes, well, I too lost my internet connection. I don't know why. I pay enough for the damn thing. It should follow me into the next world for what I pay. I too thought of Kant. So I lost it right as the instant Karen finished speaking. So forgive me if I'm repeating what other people said in between. I also thought of Kant when Joe was speaking. I was going to say anything, but I sort of forgot who was here. I was like, okay, that he believed that even if you weren't feeling it, even if you weren't feeling kind, even if you weren't in the mood to do a good deed, even if you were having a day or a lifetime in which you hated everyone around you and everyone who you'd ever met and had never met, it was still better to perform kind actions. And so I'm just wondering about the word intended here. Does it really mean intended in the sense that we usually mean it in English, or does it mean more obscure, which might fit more with the yin de theme?
Yeah, the language itself is not clear, probably intentional, just like the poem. But so my interpretation is that, it's related to this accumulate, obscured good deed. But that's just my own take. Jason and then CK.
Yeah, I like to talk about this point, right? This actually he I think the method recognized it. It's a very well structured couplet. So if we pay attention, they talk about having something and without something, right? Flower and wine and the candle and the lamp. That's all strong contrast. And the spring, okay, means a happy hour. Okay, constantly there, and the night itself is bright. So this all very well match word by word, seven words. So it put in this story basically show. I'm not sure what's the deep meaning there, but it shows the contrast between the yang world and the yin world. Okay. And one has flower and wine and constantly springtime, and another one has no light, no candle, and it's dark. But the author make a quick tweak, right? Because even during this time, the night itself is bright. So kind of hint their relationship, the Song and the Zhang, these two persons' heart, okay, can communicate, know each other, even without the candle and the light. That's my interpretation on that. But I would like to see how Pin read this one. Yeah. And another thing is about faith. Okay. I think at least based on this story, we are definitely being fated. Okay, there's no way to change because Song has been decided to die at this moment. He has to die, and then his mother, according to the book, is 9 years, so she can live for another 9 years. And just recall on the story of Journey to the West, right? The handsome, the monkey kid, right? What he did, he went to the underworld. He just destroyed, take out the book, and then erase his name on the book. So he never died. So that's the way to do it. So in a way, it's fated, but in a way you can change it. So just like the Monkey King in the Journey to the West, he went to Underworld and just take out the book and remove his name and his friend's name, so they can live forever, right? And here also show how important of the filial piety, right? Only thing you can change is filial piety. So they give you 9 years, okay, holiday or to not die for another night, because but after that you still need to die. So right after his mother's funeral, he just died. Okay, so I think that's the message here.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Well, since you asked, I'll share my interpretation real quick. And I tease that, of course, I went on Google and read about other people's interpretations of this poem. So I think there are 2 layers to me. One is that in the plot, right, in the story, both of these guys had shocking findings. And even though overall there's not a bad thing, it's got to be very disturbing and sad in some way. One guy found out that he has 9 years to live before he dies, and also his mother, his mother only has 9 years. He has a limited amount of time with his mom. And then the other guy learns that he's going to die immediately. And also, even though he's assigned this job, it's only a 9-year appointment, he doesn't know what's going to happen after that. So he being a nice guy, so the story says they were holding hands as they were leaving the court, and so the guy gave him a poem. I think it's a poem of consolation, saying that don't worry, I'll be okay and you'll be okay. The one that's, like you said, the one that's in the young world, that's corresponds to the first verse here, that in the young world, appreciate the small things in life. As long as you have flowers and wine to drink, it's always spring for you. And the other one is, even though I'm going to go to the underworld, there's no light, but I have a pure heart. So yeah, the night is still going to be bright for me. It's an abstract thing, and I think on the other layer, it's also ELJ, I think, wrote in the text box that if in the original Chinese is really half heart, no heart, it could also point to your true intentions. So I think this is the second verse, is that when your intentions are pure, there's always brightness, no matter where you are, even if you're in the underworld. So this is kind of it's also an explanation of the exam answer. So that's my interpretation. But these are all, I think, intentionally very vague, so that 100 people can get 100 different things out of it. So CK, thank you for waiting.
Oh, am I supposed to speak now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to make some general comments outside of this story, because I think I've heard quite a lot about this story. Firstly, I would like to say that Hu Songling wrote in a very economical and economically classical prose, which makes the so-called common folk easy to understand his writings. Even today, if for people who did not have a classical Chinese education, I don't think it's too difficult to understand what he was writing about, or what the way he wrote from his prose. Secondly, Liao Zhai Zhi Yi, that this book, interestingly, was the favorite book of a Marxist communist leader by the name of Deng Xiaoping. That was his favorite book. You know, he loves Liao Zhai Zhi Yi more than any other Marxist literature, and he read it quite frequently, and you know, went back to it for leisure and inspiration. And interestingly enough, the phrase or the quip that is commonly attributed to Deng Xiaoping, to the likes of, it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. 黑猫白猫能捉老鼠的就是好猫. It's not really from Deng Xiaoping, and Deng Xiaoping never said he created this. It actually came from Liao Zhai Zhi Yi, from one of the stories, and I don't remember which one it was, but I remember how it was written. It says 黄里白里得鼠者雄. So it conveys the same message. It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. So it has an influence, even, you know, historically and politically on the trajectory of China somewhat, because probably one of his greatest leaders in modern times read it. So that's what I thought I wanted to share with our readers or our audiences here.
Yeah, thank you. As I was, you know, doing a little research and reading about this, I also found out that another famous communist leader, Mao Zedong, during the massive shelling of mainland on the island Quemoy, during that time, Mao Zedong actually quoted one of the stories in Liao Zhai, the one about Zhang Shen Jiangui. You know, I think the passage was the story of this guy running downstairs, and he saw a ghost. I don't remember what exactly happened, you know, but basically he was scared, but he didn't run away, and nothing bad happened. So Mao was kind of saying, oh, well, you know, he was making the analogy that the US is like the ghost, but good thing that we decided not to be afraid of the ghost and just start firing artillery at Quemoy and see that, you know, nothing bad is happening. Well, anyway, I'm just bringing this up that these stories are so infused into our minds. You know, oftentimes when we think of something, some story will just randomly pop up. Jason.
Yeah, if nobody has to talk about, there's one thing I think is also was noted. I think it's Kanishka asked talk about the question, the examination question. There's no question mark, and I don't think it's through the 1,300 years. I don't think they never have a question mark on the examination. I think, you know, because usually that's a typical title for you to write, and then so-called ADEX writing, that's typical in the Qing dynasty, and I think usually it's a quote from the one sentence or one phrase from the 4 books, either Confucius mentions the great learning or the doctrine of the mean. Okay, so something like I think the one time they call it 15 and start to make my mind to study. Okay, that's just the title from the Confucius Analect. And then you have to start to write. Based on this, you have to write it. And the way to write it is very unlike in the Western culture. You will say, okay, I argue. Okay, the person has to go, no, there's no I. Okay, so basically you can see the typical answer, right? You will say, if you have the intention to do the good deed, is with your intention, good deeds, no reward. So basically the answer is not like your opinion. Basically you are speak for the ancient sage. So basically that's the very strange way to writing. Okay, but if you go through this writing, if you survive this writing, you will become a very good writer because you can write anything you're supposed to write and without getting into any kind of trouble. Okay, so I think that's the great skill. If you don't mind put the effort, you can learn.
Thank you, Jason. Well, I don't see any hands up, so maybe if there's no further comments, we can close out this discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks anybody have a question? I just put for the next week we talk about another philosopher in the Song Dynasty, and he's about the qi. Okay, so basics we have many ways to understand qi. So basics, the ghost. How does ghost exist? Right, that's also related to qi, but that's not the thing I'm going to talk about next week. But basics, even how does ghost exist? That also use qi to explain it. All right, so I think that's many ways to explain it. So that's just a little bit for the next week.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. It was a great Halloween
Great.
session. Yeah.
This was fun.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I enjoyed this.
This was a lot of fun.
I don't think anybody will fall asleep for this one. So.
No. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a great
Ben.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you,
Jason.
Madeline. Bye-bye.
Bye.